You're listening to the RE Social Podcast with your hosts, Andrew and Vince from AnVi Invest. For more information, go to AnViInvest.com.
What's up, you guys? This is Andrew and Vince from AnVi Invest. Today, we're just going to basically introduce ourselves, and this is kind of episode 1 of our podcast. So I'm going to give a quick bio about myself, and then Vince will do the same. And we're just kind of introducing what we do as AnVi, a little bit about our goals and vision, our story, hopefully inspires you, and a little bit about what we're trying to do with this podcast. So just real quick, I'm Andrew McCormick. I am a music lessons business owner with a little brick and mortar, and have been kind of addicted to all things entrepreneurship for a long time. I was literally selling drawings at like 5 years old to like the girls in my class of like Looney Tunes and stuff, So I've always found a way to hustle. I bought my first car at like 15, all on my own, just mowing lawns and figuring it out. And I've taken all that work ethic and hard work into what we have now with AnVi, and I'm doing a lot of the operations managing, and I love it. It's awesome, and it's definitely the best, if you will, bang for your buck in terms of time commitment versus what I get back, which is just ever-growing assets, cash flow, tax benefits, etc. So that's my story. Vince?
What's up, guys? Thanks, Drew. So that was Drew's backstory. I am originally from India. I came here 2008, did my master's, and I worked for a battery company before, Nanomaterials, and then I now work for a medical device company, actually, so developing intellectual property for them. But outside of that, I am super nerdy and passionate about real estate. So my role in the company is I do all of the acquisitions, a lot of the capital raising, private equity relationships, building with investors and such. And we also do run a local meetup if you're ever in the area. We live in Orange County, California, SoCal. So, come to our meetup. It's called RE Social. But yeah, that's I'm really passionate about many of the things Drew spoke about, cash flow, passive income, retire early, financial freedom, all those kind of things. You want to be tuned in. We're probably going to have, one episode a month?
Yeah, so at this point, we're just kind of playing with the format. Vince has been on a couple of major podcasts, and, we've kind of gotten bitten by the bug ourselves and wanted to do it on our own. And so we're thinking, I think, probably once a month to at least start. And if we want to trim that into once a week, eventually we can. Right now, we're just busy. He's got a W-2, and I've got a lot of stuff I'm doing between AnVi and everything else that I do. But I think once a month probably. And the goal is to have a new guest every single month that's going to provide value in some different facet, whether it's a realtor, someone who specializes in short-term rentals, someone who specializes in, I don't know. We're basically just going to try to provide as much value as possible to not only ourselves as the interviewer, but also to, of course, you guys, the listeners. And that's the whole goal, is helping everybody. I want everybody to come up. I think you feel the same way.
Yeah, no, just me.
Just
us. No, so our goal is actually is to be like a someone you can go to if you need any information on, hey, I've been working my W-2 job for 10 years and, I have 20 grand saved up in my 401k. Like, what do I do with my life? I'm already 32, right? So we want to be able to provide people alternative solutions to actually retire early and, be financially free. Actually, one of my buddies, Kev, he just actually retired from our W-2 job, and he's, doing more crypto trading and those kind of things. So RE, it usually stands for real estate, but we want to keep it more focused towards real estate, but we will also be talking about real assets, anything that could be assets, right? So stocks.
Yeah. I'd say just anything that is wealth generation, anything under that umbrella, I think is probably the idea. So, for me and for Vince, most people grow up without any financial education. And that's a big part of it. And once I became even remotely literate in terms of finances, and Vince is just on a whole different level, of course, I became very passionate about sharing that with others and borderline lecturing friends. So I figured, well, why not just throw a podcast out? And that way I don't have to sit there and lecture. I can just say, hey, here's a podcast on that exact subject of, oh, you want to buy your first home, or you're not sure if you should invest first or buy a primary res, whatever it is. I'd love to be able to, scale this podcast up and talk about, all different kinds of subjects that way.
Yeah, Drew's actually a licensed realtor in California.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're actually currently in a deal right now. In fact, that's a good segue to kind of talking about the AnVi story a little bit, and what we're doing now, all the way up to now, but starting maybe back to where we began. Was it 2018?
2018, January is when we read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And July is when we closed our first triplex.
Yeah, so it took a few months. We both were diving deep into assorted books. I mean, Rich Dad Poor Dad kicked it off for me for sure. And in fact, I remember reading it a long time ago and not quite like I didn't quite get it because I was like, my early 20s. Mm-hmm. And then reading it later, I think my early 30s or something like that. And then you and I both had that conversation and we're like, hey man, this is something. We need to get on this, Time is precious, and we're both just working these garbage W-2 jobs,
Yeah.
And but yeah, so there was that, and then I think reading, anything real estate related. In fact, so funny, we were at that Jake and Gino event because that was the first real estate book I ever read, just by mere coincidence, that Wheelbarrow Profits. So props to you guys. You guys put on a good event as well if you're listening. And the book was actually pretty good and pretty educational. But yeah, so we basically educated ourselves for 6 months. I know Vince was aggressively analyzing, looking at deals probably that whole time. Found a triplex in Bakersfield because the numbers worked, and then got our face caved in.
The worst deal of all time. Yeah.
At first, yeah. Vince, you want to talk about that? Like a little bit of...
Yeah, so our first deal, so it took us about 6 months to tie something into contracts from first when we read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? So it took us a long time. We actually used our local buddy here, Juan, who's our realtor on that one. Mm-hmm. He's actually from SoCal, but he helped us drive to Bakersfield and go look at the properties and stuff, and we hooked up with Matt to do our loans and stuff. So that was a little bit later. So the first thing was, we analyzed the property, we looked at the numbers, it looked good, and so we drove there and we saw that it was in the hood. And I was like, oh hell no, this looks like a bad idea. And then Drew was like, I don't know, we're not gonna live here, whatever. And then we had Chelsea, who showed up from the property management, so that was very interesting. We got some very interesting guys hanging around, tweaking, doing weird stuff. But yeah, I mean, that was the start.
Yeah, so how it went down is I got really buried in opening up the brick and mortar school right around the same time, I believe. And I was kind of setting all that up. And so Vince is all numbers and brilliant at it. And so I think where our blind spot went was in getting kind of hypnotized by the attractive numbers, which anytime you're looking in the ghetto, the numbers are usually going to be pretty good in terms of cash flow. But then that human element, as you mentioned before in some of the podcasts you've done and what we talked about, the human element is huge. Everything's people. And so we unfortunately had inherited some of the worst tenants ever. One was like a crack dealer, like not even kidding. They wouldn't answer the door ever, and then the other one would just like, the second they found out, I don't think I told them I was an owner because I was up there working on stuff. I think Vince, had his W-2, but I was up there like swinging hammers and stuff to get that middle unit fixed up. And once that other tenant knew I was an owner, they were like on me about stuff. And then it was so funny that they had given us our first rent check, like the first month in, and we're already like taking out a huge chunk of our savings, what little we even had, into this deal. And so the second they it's like the day after or something, they rescinded that check. They called their bank and had it taken back. And we're like, dude, we had our first bit of revenue as a real estate team and now it's gone, man.
Yeah.
So all the problems, that first deal, we just basically learned a lot about the human element, about, proper due diligence, just looking at rent rolls and stuff like that. And then questioned whether we should just get out of the game altogether or not. And I'm glad we didn't, even though we were bleeding like $1,000 a month or something. Or more.
Hell no, way more than that.
Yeah, between repairs and stuff.
Because just the mortgage and taxes was $2,000.
Yeah, $2,000 a month. I remember just like every month having to like write a check for $1,000 and be like, oh shit. And then
because that was our first loan, so we were actually paying 5%.
Yeah, and then all the repairs, and I was putting in sweat equity because I was just like trying to save money and going up and learn how to build a fence. At one point, couldn't get a smoke detector off because we had to change the smoke detectors. And this is the unit with the crack dealer or the drug dealers.
Mm-hmm.
And
I remember the right side.
Yeah, the right side. Yeah, and trying to get one of those smoke detectors off, and I couldn't get it off in that room. Everything else was fine. And I'm like, I can't twist this thing off. So I had Jeff. He's like this, this big stocky Kansas guy. He's my stepdad. He's also a handyman. He goes to try to get it with his bare paws. He can't get it either. So it's on there. He grabs like a hammer or something. He gives it one whack and it explodes with cockroaches. It was so.
That's when we knew we hit jackpot.
Yeah. So anyways.
Now we both live in it.
Right, yeah. But yeah, and long story short, we went through a couple of property managers as well, and then finally got it stabilized. And then truly learned the value of, and every book talks about this, by the way, the value of the team. Building the team is so huge. And it takes a while because if I'm being completely frank, I truly believe that most people are not good at what they do. We've experienced it with all kinds of people, from CPAs to attorneys to any working professional in any industry, realtors. Just most of them aren't really great at what they do. And so finding, as David Green would say, the rock stars, and then the rock stars who hang out with those rock stars is so key and so hard to do, because at first you don't know what you're looking for, what questions to ask.
Yeah, the reason that we don't find people, have you ever figured out why it is that people are not as good as how they can be good in terms of their respective fields?
I mean, I would say just complacency, but I don't know.
It's because they're not passionate about it.
Yeah.
So they're never passionate about it. So if you're a guitar teacher but you don't like guitar, like it's over.
True.
Right?
That's very true. That's how I went to music school.
Yeah.
Just passionate about teaching and music. It's like that Grant Cardone, it's a book title, Be Obsessed or Be Average.
Oh yeah, I love that book.
So much truth to it, actually. It sounds over the top, but it's absolutely true. You have to be obsessed. So anyways, that's kind of our story. And then we got, quickly after that, we realized, okay, let's keep going. And then, we got funding for the second deal, the duplex.
Yeah, that's just, you and me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we just did that. And then, during the pandemic, when everybody else was trying not to buy, we ended up scooping up how many units during that?
We went from 5 units to 28 units.
28 units, yeah.
During the pandemic.
And during the pandemic, yeah. So when everyone else was running, we were charging right into it.
Yeah.
And cruising. Now, granted, it's partly because we had a good team.
We had a good team, and we were using some outrageous creative strategies, which is definitely not recommended for most people.
Person.
Yeah, but we were creatively financing a lot of those deals because we didn't have a lot of money. We were able to buy the first few, maybe the first $1 million,
right?
But
after that, you just got to get creative.
Remember when we say that we make garbage, we work at W2, we make 6 figures, and that is each, right? So that is more than twice what an average American home brings, and we still think it's a scam. We are at the top 10%, and we believe it's a complete scam to be in that route, because I will never make exponentially more than what I make. I will get cost of living adjustment. I mean, Drew has a business, so he could make a little bit more, but he could grow more, he could open more branches. But if you trade your time for money, this whole podcast is all about, is you would never be where you want to be. I cannot make $250,000 at my work. It's not a thing. My boss's boss doesn't make that much, probably.
Yeah, I still think about the amount that you and I have put into this business and pushing it forward. I'm like, I could have bought the fancy car or something like that, or the fancy watch, but then I'd have nothing to show for it.
I have a fancy car. It runs on hydrogen.
But I'm so glad that I decided to just dump, a lot of extra income into this business and into deals and into fueling this thing. Because at this point now, the way that our properties are appreciating, we're essentially doubling our income every year. And if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, we at 5% appreciation per year. Last year was about 20% for us. Let's just say 5%. We will grow about $175,000. It's just not us. We have partners too, like my sister, Drew's mom, K1, Stevie, and a lot of people. But we all grow so much every year, and we're not putting in any more time or extra effort. So that's just what we already have set up, and that is more money than I would make from my job, like in my entire life. Like, I would never make $175,000.
And as an entrepreneur myself, I'm always thinking, well, what do I want to do? If I want to retire, and I don't even want to retire, but having that like nest egg down the line, having the appreciation on all these assets is huge. But my big thing is freedom. That's my biggest thing. I'd like to travel, like the freedom to have the systems in place eventually with this business where, I kind of do what I want, when I want, with who I want, however long I want, kind of thing. That ultimate freedom. That's my big why. That kind of actually nicely segues into what I was going to answer with this last question. So with this podcast, this is just us for now, but we're going to have guests and we're going to have certain questions. One of those questions I really like that Vince brought up, and that you always ask at the meetups that we do, is, what's the one thing that we would tell our listener? So I'll ask you this first and I'll answer it myself. So Vince, what's the one thing that you would tell our listeners right now to help them get to their next deal or their first deal?
I would say, what is stopping them from making the next move? It's always fear, right? It's fear of the unknown that what actually stops us. So the reason that we don't own we do, but a lot of big multi-families is because that we don't know how that works exactly, right? So it's the same for everybody. So if someone wants to buy a single family, what is that one step that's stopping you from actually making is it the phone call to your banker to find out if you qualify for a loan, or is it to see actually who should you call? Do you need a realtor? Is that one? So make that one step, right? So then once you have that one step, you can do the next step or even ask them for the next step.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. How about you?
That one step. Yeah, so for me, the one thing that I would tell our listeners to help them get to the next deal is to find your why. Fear becomes irrelevant. Obstacles become irrelevant. Mountains become molehills when you have a big enough why. And so that's kind of why I brought it up. I somehow kind of rabbit trailed into that whole, this is my why. And my why is actually freedom, and it always has been. This is why I was working at a young age, and I was trying to make my own money. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, and I wanted my own car because that meant freedom. I could go, so I was driving around. Granted, this is Kansas. I grew up in a small town in Kansas, but I was driving around in my own car at like 15 years old, and it was because it gave me freedom to come and go as I please, to do what I want, to just soak up life, and do the things that I want to do, whether that's, go punch in 12 hours in a job that I'm passionate about, such as what we do now, or if it's, hey, I just want to go to, Spain, or maybe go to Florida like we just went for that event, Having that freedom. I already have a lot of that now, but now I just want to take that to the next level. And so find your why. That's my why, Part of my why is also to take care of my family, who just doesn't have a lot of money, of course. So that's a huge reason why I'm able to put in 12-hour days before I start burning out, is my why is so strong. Anytime I get tired, I just think about, okay, well, what's the consequences if I don't keep going, And so find that, whatever that is to you, figure that out, get passionate about it, feel it, deep inside your bones, and you'll figure it out, So that kind of wraps it up. I want to remind everybody that we do a meetup here locally in Orange County, California, typically on the first Wednesday of every month. So if you're listening and you haven't attended one of those events, definitely show up. We go into different topics. It's usually topical. A couple months ago it was inflation. which is still extremely topical, but it was right when it was like, bordering on 6%. And then also, what was the last one?
Cash flow.
Death of cash flow, and just how hard it is to find cash flow and creative ways to overcome that obstacle. So if you guys are local to the Orange County area, even if it's as far as San Diego, LA, would highly recommend showing up, hanging out. You'll learn something, and I think the most important thing is you'll network and you'll meet other people. The networking element by far has changed our game more than anything else.
We like to call it social.
Yeah,
we like to be more social with people because networking, people don't like that word anymore.
Dude, I'm all about networking, social, whatever, it's huge. Your network is your net worth, and I've never understood that term more until
you have a net worth.
Until you actually have network and net worth, So anyways, I think that wraps it up. Vince, any last comments or?
No, keep checking us out, guys. We're going to release one episode a month because we both have careers and such, so we don't have a lot of time. But we will make it timely. We will make it worth your time. Every month will be a nice topic. Maybe the first one will be either proximity is power, something like that.
And feel free to comment, if you're watching us on the YouTube video or just on the podcast in any outlet, DM us. Our website is AnViInvest.com, so you can private message us there. You can DM us on Instagram. We're pretty active on that. It's for a couple of young guys. It's at AnVi Invest. And then if you guys have any questions or you want to talk about how you can get started, we're always looking for partners. We're partnering with friends and family and doing it very successfully now for years. And we'd love to help you in any way we can, be it active or passive. So,
Thanks for listening.
Episode 1 down.
But that's episode 0.